Hello, folks. Welcome to Holding On with Holder, where I talk to interesting people about interesting topics. My name is Steve Holder, and I am your host. My guest this evening is Erik Allen, MMA promoter, podcaster, and recovering addict. And welcome, Erik. Glad to have you.
Oh, man, thank you so much for this. This is a great opportunity and such an honor to be here, Steve. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. So tell us a little bit about your background and who are you?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in like typical household, went to Sunday school, played Little League. My dad would take my best friend Dave and literally throw us in dumpsters behind big stores and say, go find treasure. That was a typical Saturday morning. And my parents got divorced when I was 11 years old. And essentially after that, my mom was quickly together with a guy who was very physically abusive. He was alcoholic. And I mean, to the point where I remember like peeking through the bedroom window when they're arguing and see him hit her with a cordless phone when those were around. And, the smart thing would have been to just leave and press charges, but she didn't do that. Instead, she got pregnant and they moved us to small town Montana, Stevensville, Montana, with population 1,200 people, 5 acres, beautiful property. Problem was they rented this house. It had 3 bedrooms. There was one for them, one for my little brother who was just a couple months old at the time, and then my sister who's 4 years younger than me. And they said, Erik, you get to live in the garage. And I literally had this plastic tarp at the end of my bed that separated my bed from the truck that pulled in. And, it was fun to be out there, except for during the winter when it got to negative degrees at night. It was a little bit cold at that point, and, they came arguing one night when I was 13 years old. I was brushing my teeth and really wasn't anything different. But as I was brushing my teeth, I felt God tell me in that moment, like, man, you got to turn around and check this out. And so the way the house was set up was behind me was the kitchen to the pantry to the garage where I lived. And as I peeked around the corner, I saw him on top of my mom, just boom, 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 one shot after the other. I'm like, man, I got to get this guy off. So I snuck up behind him and grabbed a cast iron pan and swung as hard as I could and split the back of his head open and didn't knock him out. He turned around and he said, what the? And as he was saying that, I took another swing and split his forehead open and somehow still didn't knock him out. He's so drunk. I'd fallen over at that point. I remember him standing over me yelling, and my mom jumps up, lands like 6 punches in a row, blood splatting on the wall. Cops show up, take him to jail. Again, no charges were pressed. And at that point, I was kicked out of my house. I had 3 months left of my freshman year of high school. So I bounced around from friends' houses, and that kind of led me on this path of destruction for the next 10 years of my life.
Wow. So you had a very rough childhood.
It was a little crazy for sure.
Yeah, to say the least, man. So how old were you when you got involved with drugs? Was it drugs or alcohol or both?
Both. When I moved back to Washington State after that to live with my dad, he rented a house for him and I, and he put Hunger Man meals in the meal or in the freezer, $20 in a cup for my lunch money for the week, and cereal and milk in the house. And then he'd go stay with his girlfriend. And so I'd see him a couple times a month in passing, but really I kind of had the house to myself. So I had no adult supervision, no accountability, anything like that. And so I started smoking pot essentially my sophomore year, and we were smoking pot before school, during lunch, after school. And then I was taking acid and mushrooms and hash and, anything I could get my hands on. And when I was 18 years old, it caught up to me. I had a bong in my hand at the time, and I was arrested for drug paraphernalia, which is now legal in the state of Washington. But at the time in 1998, it was not. And I had to go to jail. I had a black and white chain gang outfit on, bright orange slippers, still a senior in high school, scared to death. Actually didn't even tell my dad that I went to jail for like 10 years afterwards. I just said, hey, I'm going to stay the night at, Danny's house or something like that. And, then I went and came back the next day. He never even said anything. But I was kicked out of the house 2 weeks after I graduated high school by my dad. Woke up to a note on my bathroom mirror that said, you can't comply with house rules. You have 48 hours to get out. And so essentially from 18 to 21, I moved 21 different times, living on couches of floors of second cousins and things like that. And during that time, I was still smoking pot pretty heavily. When I got arrested, I was on a year of probation, so I couldn't smoke pot during that year. But what that did was increase my alcohol intake. And so that's really where I think the addiction started. So for the next 4 or 5 years after that, I spent a lot of time in the music industry, a lot of time backstage, and just kind of really enhancing or living that lifestyle of a rock star without being a rock star.
Yeah. So did you get involved with crime to get money for your drugs?
I didn't, I mean, I think I sold pot twice to some buddies for, but that's it. I never actually did crime. I was always against crime, and I still am to this day. But I thought, I could just smoke pot. I'm not hurting anybody. It's just for myself. But I never turned to crime.
Yeah. Well, good for you.
Yeah.
So how did you turn your life around?
I was working in the music business. It was always a dream of mine to get into the music business, and worked for Universal Records for a year, got laid off on my 1-year anniversary during the Napster days, if people remember that. And it sent me into this downward spiral. Well, I was really depressed. I was working at Starbucks at night, and I'd get off work and go to the store, get a 6-pack of beer, go to my ghetto apartment, drink a 6-pack of beer every night. And one night, this girl walked into the Starbucks who doesn't drink coffee and said, "Hey, we've got this cool college age event at our church. Would you be interested in going?" And me being depressed, not having any friends, and her very good looking, absolutely, I'll go, And so I went down there, and I think it was like God was planting these seeds in that moment, because I saw these guys that I knew from high school. And this was like, I was 23 at the time. And I was like, man, I haven't seen you in 10 years. I haven't seen you in 5 years. And so it was just weird connections. And about a month later, it was Easter 2004. I was managing a band. They played a concert the night before Easter. And I woke up on my buddy's basement after a night of partying, and there's probably 15 of other guys passed out around on the floor. But I woke up early. I felt God in that moment say, man, you're going down this road of destruction that is going to end real bad if you don't make some changes. And so I gave my life to Christ right there in that moment. I just right there, and I quit cold turkey drugs, drinking cigarettes and everything from that moment, and haven't turned my back since. And called that girl up and said, "Hey, thanks for inviting me to that church event." I got her voicemail and said, "Hey, maybe I'll see you at the store sometime." And a month later, we were dating, and now we've been married for almost 17 years.
Wow. That's an interesting story also.
Yeah, for sure. We were actually both born at exactly the same minute, different day, different years, but on the birth certificate, we're documented at 1:41 p.m.
Wow. I guess you two were meant for each other, huh?
I guess so, yeah.
So do you work with other addicts now and help them with their recovery?
I don't do anything outreach wise here. I do a lot of podcasting where I share my stories, and I go on other podcasts to hopefully, share my story and hopefully inspire someone to just get out of that. The cool thing the one thing that I had to realize after all the years of abusing my body, physically and mentally through that, was I had to finally, I built up a lot of shame and embarrassment about that. And then when I decided to share my story, I realized that, our past doesn't define our future. We can make a change at any moment. Whatever we've been through, we can just say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to leave a different legacy for my kids, or a different legacy for my family, or just get sober. And we could decide to do that. Yes, it's going to be struggles, and yes, it's going to be tough to do, but you can make a decision to do that and then take the action and the appropriate steps to get out of that.
Yeah. So how long have you been clean and sober now?
Since that day. So 17 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. It's been a fun journey, for sure.
All of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really has. I think, when I first decided to give my life to Christ and get sober, I had to make a decision in that moment and call my buddies and say, hey guys, I'm going on a path that is really bad for me. I need to take a break from partying. I need to take a step away from, going to the bar scene every night. And that was a tough conversation, but all my friends, they're still my friends today. They understood that, like, man, you got to get better, get yourself in good shape. And I was able to take that step away. And then I really, without even realizing it, started interviewing people. I essentially started meeting up with guys who had great marriages, meeting up with guys that had great relationship with Christ, and they were living that life, that sober life. They were successful in business. And I started taking them out to coffee and just saying, man, here's where I came from, but I'm ready to make some changes. How did you do it? Or how are you, maintaining that? And I think that was probably the toughest part, but everything else, the first 5 years of our marriage, my wife and I, we just did us. We just had us. Like, we didn't have kids. She came from a broken home as well. So we kind of brought some baggage into the marriage that we kind of had to work through, but it's all been fun. I mean, I think everything is a learning experience.
Yeah. So were you ever involved in a 12-step program?
My dad was heavily in when I was younger. And then I've been to a couple meetings, but I've never actually gone through and gotten, the coin or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what do you do for a living?
So I do voiceover work. I do public speaking. I run 2 podcasts, and I do video and brand product videos as well. And then I'm also a full-time employee for a startup where I'm in the customer success side of things for a swag management company.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does being an MMA promoter fit into all of that? Where does that come in?
Yeah. Funny, right? I started Top Rated MMA in 2012. It really started as an apparel company. My wife came up with the name, and this was during the Tap Out era. And we made a lot of business mistakes. We didn't do a business plan. We didn't know what we were doing. We just bought a bunch of inventory and said, hey, it's just going to sell, no problem. And I think what ended up happening was after 3 years, about 2015, I got bored with it. I literally put an ad in Craigslist and said, who wants to buy this company? And this guy called me up, offered me a few grand for the name and the brand and all of that. And in that call, I decided not to quit yet. And so I took the next year of just really kind of basically running the business real low. And then in 2017, I launched the Top Rated MMA Show, which is a podcast. And humbly, we're considered the #1 MMA podcast out here in the Northwest now. And episode 238, I think, drops this weekend. So it's been a great journey through that. But yeah, so I'm not a promoter. I love like having fighters on my show to help them get their name out there. I talk with a lot of guys that are up and coming fighters or early pro fighters and really love to hear their stories. You know, I like to, say real fighters, real stories, because the very first question I ask all of them is, where did you grow up and what was childhood like for you? Because I want to understand, and I want my listeners to understand that I'm just talking to real people. They decided to get into MMA or they decided to become a millionaire, through entrepreneurship efforts and things like that. And so that's what's allowed me to continue with those shows.
So you're not in the MMA fighter yourself?
I am not. I much prefer to be on this side of the cage. Yes.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I've met many, many fighters, and they're probably the nicest people that I've ever met in my life, which is amazing. I would never mess with them, right? I would never want to be on the wrong side of the fight with those guys, but they are the absolute nicest people that I've ever met. And they'll do anything for you if you respect them. And if you're in their tribe, especially, they will always have your back. And so that's what I love, just the mutual respect between fighters. Even when they're in the cage fighting, they're done and they're hugging and they're shaking hands. Hey man, they know it's just a job. It's not, personal most times.
Yeah. So do you stay physically fit?
I do try to. Yeah. So I'm 41 now. And before I turned 40, I decided that I wanted to lose or get down to 175 pounds. I was right at 200 pounds. And sure enough, my 40th birthday came around and I hadn't worked out and I still weighed 200 pounds. And I was like, seriously? So in 2020, I said, you know what? I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to be in the best shape I can by the time I turn 41, December of 2020. And in March, I started working out. I worked out for 15 days straight or so. I did 45 minutes of cardio, and then I missed a day. And it wasn't even something that I missed because I had to go somewhere. I just got lazy. And I was so mad that I said, I'm never going to do this again. And so I went on this trek, and I did 120 days straight of 45 minutes of cardio. I quit eating all sugars. I wasn't even eating a potato chip, really changed my diet around. I lost 30 pounds in 4 months. And now, I'm back to a healthier weight. I lost a ton and I built up a little bit more just so I could, I think I was pushing my body limits a little too far, but I'm back up to a healthy weight and I feel good about it.
Okay, well, good.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to people who feel stuck in their life?
Oh man, get around people that are living the life that you want to live. Whatever that is. If you want to be a podcaster and you're stuck, or if you're addicted to drugs and you want to get sober, go find people that are sober. Go find people that are being successful in whatever that is that you want to go for. Yeah. And you have to get uncomfortable to get comfortable in those moments, right? Like go put yourself out there, like Ed Milet, a guy that I follow, he talks about if you're walking around at 85 degrees, go find guys that are walking around 185 degrees, and just being in their presence is going to lift you up. It's going to encourage you and motivate you to be better every day. And so I say, go surround yourself with people that are living the life that you want, and don't let your past define you. You can make that change at any moment.
Yeah. It's easier said than done though, isn't it?
It is. Yep. And you'll have days where you don't want to do something, but it's that commitment to yourself that you have to hold on to. And that'll help you get through those rough days. I mean, I wake up at 4 a.m. 6 days a week, and there's not always days where I'm like, I got to bed on a really good time, or, I slept great and I'm ready to rock and roll at 4 a.m. But I know that if I don't wake up at 4 a.m., I'm gonna be really mad at myself because I didn't keep to my commitment that I made. So my commitment to myself is waking up at 4 a.m. 6 days a week. And some days are rougher than others, but I still make it happen. And I still get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and, get my coffee in and start my day with a win.
Wow. So do you have a big goal in mind that you're working on now?
I do. Yeah. So in the last year, I created a vision wall. Everyone had done a vision board. I'd heard of people doing that before, and I just had never done it. And so this year I took half the wall in my office and I literally converted it to a vision wall. So I put pictures and goals and, quotes on there. And as funny as it is, one of the goals that I have on that wall is if I can't pee off my front porch, my neighbors are too close. And so my goal is to have that 20 acres with the, the house and stuff, where I can provide for my family and provide that property for my family. And we can continue to live the life that I think we were destined to be. Like my wife loves to host, so we want a little bit of a bigger house, and we want to be able to do that. And so that is one of my goals that are on my wall. So I see it every day, and I say that to myself every morning. I'm like, man, here we go. Let's make it happen. And so, yeah, that's one of my goals, is to have the 20 acres.
Okay. I hope you get it.
Thank you.
I think you will.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So what role does fear play in your life? Does that ever hold you back?
Oh man, I think it did for the longest time. It was, fear of judgment from other people. Fear. I didn't want people to know my past. I didn't want people to know that I'd been arrested and there's a mug shot of me out there. I didn't want people to know that I had gone through addiction or had to fight a guy when I was 13 years old. Fear of judgment has probably been my biggest thing that has attacked me over the years. And one of the things, and I don't really hit that too often anymore. But my other sense of fear is letting my family down. So anytime that comes to my mind, I immediately go, nope, I'm here for a reason. I'm here to change things around for the legacy of this family, this Allen tribe, so anytime that fear creeps into my life, I just remember, like me, I go to, my quotes on my wall, or I say a quick prayer. I'm like, nope, that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what I'm supposed to do. And there is no fear. And here's what's going to happen. But yeah, fear happens to everybody. Even fighters, when I talk to them, like, 9 out of 10 of them will say, you know what, if there's a fighter out there that says they're not scared before they step in that cage, they're lying to you. So I think the same way as an entrepreneur, like, yeah, I fear of judge, I fear of failure. But if for me personally, if I say a quick prayer, or I remind myself of why I'm doing what I'm doing, then that kind of kicks that fear out real quick.
Yeah. Well, I've always said fear is not the absence of bravery. It's doing what needs to be done, even though you're scared to death.
So good. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes you just got to do things afraid.
Yep. Oh yeah, absolutely. I definitely had fear when I was 13 years old, going up to try to stop that guy from hitting my mom, but I knew that if I didn't, it was going to get real bad.
Yeah. So do you think you telling your story helps people to be hopeful?
I think so. I get some good feedback and messages through my pages and things like that of people who have said, man, I've gone through stuff like that, or, I had a family member that went through that. Thank you for sharing your story. Really encouraging. So I do, my goal when I wake up in the morning is, if I open my eyes, there's win number one, and then make my bed, there's 2 wins I can get in 15 seconds. And then my immediate goal after that is to make one person smile every single day, whether that's virtually or in person. And if I can do that, then hopefully I'm making that impact on somebody.
Yeah. So do you have a lot of regrets about your past?
That it's an interesting question, because I think, yeah, there's moments where I wish that I could go back and change, but I wouldn't change anything. Like, that's kind of contradicting, but like, there's a lot of things that I wish I hadn't have done, but I don't necessarily regret it, because it made me the person and the man that I am today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made a lot of mistakes. I still make mistakes. I'm still learning. I have this thing on my wall that says constant and never ending improvement. So I always try to improve. But I would say I don't necessarily have regrets. I wish things might have changed, but again, I don't think I'd go back and, I don't regret anything, just because it's made me the person that I am today.
Yeah. You keep up with politics and current events?
I used to. I turned off the TV. Well, we haven't had cable for probably 15 years, but I turned off all news media outlets probably 4 years ago.
Did you?
I hear bits and pieces here and there from some of the guys that I follow online. But I try not to any of the major news outlets or anything like that. I don't follow. Where I live, we were kind of like, what's COVID this whole time? I get that it's a real kind of thing, but out here, nobody was wearing masks, and they tried a mask mandate. It lasted about a day, and pretty much no one's worn masks, and we have really low cases. And so it's been an interesting sort of area out here for sure.
Wow. It sounds like Idaho is a place to be.
Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, too many people know that right now. So we're getting swarmed with a bunch of Californians in Washington and Oregon folks coming out.
Yeah, there's some wild people coming from California now, so you better watch them.
Yeah, Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's we're kind of
I'm
hoping we
joking,
have.
of course. I love California.
Yeah. Well, we always hope that, you can always tell when there's Californians up here during the winter because you see all the cars pulled over to the side of the road when there's snow, like, a half inch of snow on the ground. When, some winters out here get rough. So us Idahoans are like, man, we can always tell when the Californians are here, but maybe some of the harsh winters will move them back home.
Yeah. There's a joke in East Tennessee. If the weather forecast calls for snow flurries, they close the schools. And that's not much of an exaggeration.
Right. Yeah.
And it's so different when I was a kid, man. We had big snows a lot. I mean, it was
Yeah.
constant. I remember times of being out of school for 2 weeks in a row, sleigh riding every day and loving it. But
Wow.
nowadays, we don't get very much snow, but people are so scared of it.
Yeah. Did you grow up in Tennessee?
I did, right
Okay.
here in Johnson City, yeah.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember days where, lots of snow breaks and stuff like that out here. I think, we've been out here for coming up on 10 years, and I think we've maybe had 2 snow days. It's,
Yeah.
They just put on the chains on the school bus tires and take them in.
Yeah. And since you're so close to Canada, that's kind of a surprise,
Yeah. 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 So we're about 100 miles from Canada where I'm at up here.
Yeah. Because I know every time I hear the mention of Canadian blast, it scares me to death.
Yeah, totally.
To stay inside and turn up the heat when you hear that.
Right. Yeah. We're having the Arizona heat out here this week, which is just crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Rarely do we hit triple degree temps, but we hit 110 yesterday and it's 106 today. And we have about 6 days in a row of 100 plus degrees. So, and of course my AC unit went out on Sunday this week. So my wife and I are like sleeping in the basement with the kids and trying to stay as cool as possible.
Good luck, brother.
Right. Yeah. I think it got up to 89 inside my house yesterday.
Wow. It's hard to sleep in that kind of heat.
Totally. Yeah.
So do you think we have a racial problem in the United States?
Man, it's interesting. I think that there's people that are saying that we do. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I think that people are making it worse than it is. Where I'm at, we don't see that. I know a lot of people up here that are different races, and I know people have a thought about Idaho being all white and all that stuff, but we have lots of races up here. Where I'm at, I don't see it, but I know that in other cities, there probably is, and most definitely, some of the clips I see online is pretty crazy. And I think the media pushes that a lot, just the clips that I've seen, and it's gotten worse, since I was a kid, that's for sure.
Yeah.
At least that I've seen now, but yeah, it's bad, but I think it's the media really hyping it up more than it really is, I think.
Do you think there's such a thing as systemic racism? Is that real?
I'm not sure exactly. I'm not exactly sure what that means because I'm not too familiar with that term. I've heard it, but I'm not too familiar with it. But
well, the way that I guess the best way to explain it is our forefathers that started this country. For many years, you had to be rich, white, male to vote. And they kept it that way for as long as they could. Yes. So how could it be anything other? If that's the foundation, how could it be anything other than racist, classist, and sexist? Does that make sense?
Yep, totally.
Yeah. So that's kind of what it is, that everything's built on that. That's where some people like to talk about white supremacy and white privilege.
Right.
So do you feel like you're privileged because you're white?
Not at all.
No.
Everything that I have, I worked my tail off.
Yeah.
And I think that anybody out there that thinks that there's a privilege, like I get, the system might be putting you in that situation or, make it seem that way, but anybody can make a decision to make a change at any moment. I get that it might be tougher for some folks, but you can make a change to get out of any situation. And everything that I have, I've worked my tail off to get here.
Yeah. Now, how old are your kids?
11 and 8.
11 and 8. Okay. You
Yeah,
have some interesting years coming up then, don't you?
I do. Yeah, I do for sure.
And they're going to both be teenagers at the same time. So good
Yeah,
luck with that one, brother.
I know, right? Luckily, they're both active and, love sports and love the water and things like
Okay.
that. So,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, brother, I'm glad you talked to me today. I'm so glad we met. Do you have anything else you want to say before we wrap it up that I haven't given you a chance to say?
Man, I just wanted to say thank you to you, Steve, for having me on. This is truly a great show and such an honor to be here. Really appreciate having me on, man.
Well, I appreciate you being on. This is my 93rd show. So I'm thinking maybe at 100, I'm going to let it rest. I have another podcast that I started, Conversations About America.
Okay.
I think I'm going to rest this one at 100 episodes and just focus on that one.
I think that's huge, man. I mean, I think 80% of podcasts don't make it to episode 100. So the fact that you're heading there, I'm proud of you, man. That's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, brother, I appreciate you. And folks, thanks for tuning in to Holding On with Holder. Please subscribe to my channel. And feel free to share this video all over social media. And what's the name of your podcast?
The Top Rated MMA show comes out every Saturday, and the Erik Allen show comes out every Friday.
Okay. And they're on YouTube or what?
Yep. All erikallenmedia.com is the website that you can get a hold of me on, but I'm all on all social media formats from YouTube, Facebook, IGTV. I'm really active on Instagram. So if anybody is following me, Erik, ERIKG Allen, I respond to all comments and DMs that way as well.
Okay. Very good. Well, thanks again for being my guest, brother. And you have a wonderful day.
You as well. Thank you.
Bye-bye.